The way things are going, you're going to make a millionaire out of a woman who racially abused a child.
Did you call the child word? It is my own business. You call him a
What you're advocating for, it seems, is that for the rest of Shiloh's life, she should be canceled and silenced rather than try to bring some redemption into the situation.
If you call black people the N-word and racially abuse them, unfortunately, yes, it has consequences.
Everyone's flipping out over Shiloh Hendricks is saying the N-word. Nobody flipped out like this when the United States was getting destroyed.
In a shocking debate, Piers Morgan confronts the disturbing reality of fundraising for a woman who racially abused a child. The systemic manipulation behind this fundraising campaign reveals a culture that rewards bigotry instead of accountability. Are we really going to allow racism to flourish unchecked?
2020 because of black protests destroying every liberal city in America. So I don't want to hear it about, oh, she made $100,000 because she said the N-word. Who cares?
I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly, and you will
Well, go
not
on then,
have
say
to...
it. Say the N-word, go on.
No.
No.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it.
Two recent stories in the US have laid bare the shocking levels of racial division in American society, amplified by extreme and viral takes on social media. 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony is a black teenager charged with stabbing a white boy to death at a school track meeting in April. More than $600,000 in donations have poured in, not for the victim's grieving family, but for his alleged killer. Last week, Shiloh Hendricks went viral after a video showed the young mother racially abusing a 5-year-old, allegedly for stealing from her young child.
call him a child?
The fuck you talking
Did you
about?
call the child word?
None of your fucking business.
It is my own business. You call him a Okay, why don't you have the balls to say it right now again?
Fuck you.
Okay. All right, that's what you say.
You don't go digging through people's shit, you dumb fuck.
Nobody dig into your shit.
A little fucking kid just did, you dumbass.
That little kid, you call him
Yeah.
the little child?
What if he acts like one, he's gonna...
Are you about to hit him? You chase him here?
He took my son's stuff.
So that gives you the right to call the child 5-year-old.
Well, as you can see, Hendricks doesn't deny using the slur. In fact, she repeats it many times. That's all the stuff that's bleeped out. When a bystander in the park follows her with his smartphone. Hendricks set up a fundraiser on the same website as Carmelo Anthony's supporters, on which she wrote, "I called the kid out for what he was."
This is a reflection of our society's decay. By financially supporting racist actions, we are enabling a toxic cycle. The elites behind these platforms are fueling division, prioritizing profit over decency and accountability.
Incredibly, that campaign has now raised more money than the first one, surpassing $655,000 at the time of taping the show. Well, the boss of the website, Give, Send, Go, is accused of facilitating brazen racism on a platform whose motto is "Money is temporary, Jesus is eternal. He will join me later." Liberals say this is exactly what they've been warning about, that the post-BLM backlash and the crushing of DEI has provided a fig leaf for outright bigotry. Conservatives were similarly outraged by the support for Carmelo Anthony, an alleged murderer who's been glorified by some as a victim of a racist system. We're here to debate all this is the host of the Fresh and Fit podcast, Myron Gaines, the host of Night School on YouTube, Mark Lamont Hill, Lily Gaddis, a social media commentator whose video defense of the N-word mother has so far been viewed millions of times on X, and the New York Post columnist and author Ricky Schlott. Well, welcome to all of you. Ricky, look, my take on this is a stain on all their houses.
This is a reflection of our society's decay. By financially supporting racist actions, we are enabling a toxic cycle. The elites behind these platforms are fueling division, prioritizing profit over decency and accountability.
Right? I just don't know what is happening to society when you have such vast sums of money being raised for what seems to me to be deliberate, racially charged, motivational reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're fighting ugly with ugly right now. And I think this level of racial tribalism and hostility is just simply not sustainable in such a diverse democracy like America. I think it's, one is really a reaction to the other. I think both campaigns are really hideous, and I think we're showing our ugliest colors. I mean, in the scheme of things, these are small sums relative to the population of America, but you do see, I think, a really tremendous explosion of ugliness and racial hostility that I think that we should all be ashamed and embarrassed of.
Yeah, I mean, you described it, I think, in one of your posts as genuinely, is this a psyop? This would be the best $1 million invested by a foreign adversary to start a race war in America. And I knew exactly what you're getting at, because many of the comments, I think the comments have now been suspended actually on both of these funding pages, because people were quite obviously deliberately misusing them to post race baiting commentary.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go through some of the comments on either of them, you have White Lives Matter on one side, and like suggestions that the teenage boy who was stabbed was somehow like a manifestation of white supremacy, and it seems to be just a fight at a track meet that has nothing to do with racial hostility in the first place. And the poor father of this young man who died too said, please don't make this into a racial issue. And yet on his own Give, Send, Go campaign, there are comments after comment saying this is White Lives Matter, we're avenging against Carmelo Anthony's family. I mean, on all ends, this is ugly. I think that it's really co-opting the charity and giving community. I mean, I feel bad for the fundraising platforms, because I don't think this was the intention originally. But unfortunately, I think that people are really starting to take over good intents and the charity industrial complex to make it into a victim industrial complex. And it's really sad to see.
Well, we're going to have one of the founders of the Give, Send, Go site a little later in the program. But Mark Lamont Hill, you were shaking your head there. I mean, what's your take on this?
There are a couple of things that were said that I think are really interesting and important. One, there is an outside audience of people who are watching all of this and opportunistically using it for their own agendas and projects. You know, I have an investment in believing X, so I'm going to jump in the comments of this GoFundMe, etc. I have an investment in Y, I'm going to do the same thing. But what I don't want to do is compare these two things as if they're opposite sides of the same coin. For me, the intention of the campaign matters. In the case of this woman who is using the N-word, the woman isn't disputing using the N-word. The woman isn't disputing being racist. And the comments that are being left on the site before they were suspended, and the attitudes behind it, weren't saying she's being railroaded, she's being misrepresented. They were simply saying, we support racism. And I think that's disgusting, no matter who's doing it. On the other hand, the people who are fundraising for Carmelo Anthony, the argument here isn't, yeah, we did something and we don't care, like the other woman. The argument is, we're being misrepresented here. We're being railroaded. This was a self-defense claim. This is not an act of violence. This isn't first-degree murder. I'm saying what they're saying. This isn't my argument. They're saying this is a first-degree murder claim that is wrong. This is actually self-defense, and we need the money to make sure that we get a fair trial. I think, and so whether you agree with his argument or not, I think raising money for a fair trial is different than raising money for a racist.
I mean, I think the common theme between the two, and this is not to pass any view about it at this stage, although I have strong views about it, I guess the common theme is that both of them say that as a result of all the publicity, they've been doxxed and had all their personal details put everywhere on social media, which is, of course, the modern scourge which gets involved. And that as a result, they've had death threats and they have security issues and they have to move home and so on. You know, I understand that part of the argument. You know, when you're at the center of a firestorm in America and you're not used to public attention, then the levels of intimidation, threats and so on that can come your way can be extremely intimidating, if not outright dangerous. So it's different really to taking a view about either of the cases, to simply say that the commonality is that they both, I think, have said in defending the amounts that have been raised is, well, we have to defend ourselves. Either, as you're putting it, through the courts, but also in his case, the alleged killer, that he has also, I think, had direct threats against him. And in the case of the mother using the N-word in that despicable manner, she has said she's had a lot of threats too.
My quick response to that would just be, let's assume everybody's telling the truth. Let's assume she's telling the truth, and let's assume he's telling the truth. If he's telling the truth and he was doing self-defense, and he's getting harassed and doxxed. And of course, we already know lies have been told about his GoFundMe campaign, saying they were spending it on mansions and cars, all the kind of racist tropes. If that's true, he's being mistreated, and I think that's a sort of very easy case to make. When it comes to her, however, let's assume she's also telling the truth, that she used the word. She thinks the kid was acting like one. She feels like she has the right to use that word against that small baby because of whatever age-appropriate thing the kid did. If she's telling the truth and she's getting doxxed and harassed, I don't know if I want to reward her behavior with $500,000. I don't think she should be doxxed. I don't think she should be harassed. I think she has been mistreated to the extent that no one should be. You have a right to be racist. You have a right to free speech in this country. But I'm not donating money for it, and I feel a lot worse about her GoFundMe than the one for the person who's been railroaded.
Yeah. Well, Lily Gaddis, you posted a defense of Shiloh on X. It's been viewed 2.5 million times, in which it was entitled, "White People Are Finally Fighting Back. Stand with Shiloh Hendricks." What did you mean by that? Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up enforcement for those who missed the April deadline or still owe back taxes. Well, today's sponsor, Tax Network USA, can still help. If your books are a mess, if you're self-employed, or if you're a business owner, Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track quickly. They say the IRS is applying enforcement pressure at levels they've never seen before. But even after the deadline, it's not too late to take control. The consultation is completely free. Acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's tnusa.com/peers. Let Tax Network USA make the next move, not the IRS.
Here's the thing. White people have been under attack for years. It's been systematic racism. As much as Black people and people of color want to talk about systematic racism in the United States, it's quite the opposite. They get preferential treatment when it comes to getting a job, when it comes to getting into colleges. White people, on the other hand, have been getting attacked relentlessly. Look at 2016 and BLM and all the riots. We just had to sit back and watch people burn down our cities and do nothing about it. So the way to fight back against essentially this anti-white hatred that's been systemically, ingrained in U.S. society is with white unity. We don't see white unity on
Hang on. Okay, but hang on. Sorry, just to be clear, this has got nothing to do with anything you've just said. This is a disgusting racist woman who repeatedly spews the M-word, first at a young child and then at the person taking the video of her, does it with complete impunity, does it numerous times. We are talking about a bona fide, unquestionable racist. So I don't understand why what you've just said to me bears any relation to white unity or anything that you've just said. She's just a racist. Isn't she? You wouldn't dispute that.
It's not about her. It's not about her. It's about
white people
coming together and supporting another white person. And it doesn't matter.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in a country.
That's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. Would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
Mm-hmm. I do, quite frequently.
You use the M-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist. Are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
If you use the M-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendricks is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying, Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to be clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with Black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N-word?
Black people.
When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist?
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendricks? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist, and you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Well, shame on white people for allowing themselves to be systematically discriminated against in the United States. This is our country. This is a country that should be.
What do you mean your country?
Because I'm white and my
Well, there are no black people in American history. Is that what you're saying? That they've all just landed in America, invading your white country? Is that your position?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they were brought here technically.
My God, do you understand how dumb you sound?
This is stupid. This is stupid and racist, and at some point we have to ask ourselves, do we want to reward this kind of disgusting behavior by platforming it?
I don't disagree, Mark. Listen, I didn't know she was going to say that. I don't disagree with you.
No. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't think you knew ahead of time. I'm saying at this moment, someone who's saying it's technically black people brought up. No, technically Africans were stolen, enslaved, and they built this country. And the idea that you can justify calling a baby the N-word by saying that white people are losing the country is absurd. It's morally bankrupt, and it's honestly besides the point. I mean, all these are just distractions from the fact that she wants to justify dehumanizing and even animalizing a small black child. It's disgusting.
What is it?
Yeah, I never said that.
No, you may as well have done, because you're just an unashamed.
That's the implication of your
racist. Let me bring in Myron Gaines, because you've been smirking and laughing. What's funny about any of this?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and, wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admitted she's a racist.
Well, let me
I'm not wagging a finger at anybody.
She's self-identified as a racist.
But Myron, with respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist, I use the N-word against black people, I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh Hendricks and Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organized. And what I mean by this is, for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result, when in reality, it's not the police killing black people, it's black people killing black people. And if you want to talk about black on white violence, black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality or, oh, it's all so messed up, the reality is this. Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Now, look, am I saying that's awesome? Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats, and quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Right, but just to be clear, you would have no problem with one member of this panel openly saying she uses the N-word at black people with impunity and is proud of being a racist. You have no problem with that?
My worldview on the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech overrides my personal feelings. She has the right to say
That's fine. You can support the First Amendment, but you can also have a personal view about what she said.
My feelings are irrelevant. The Constitution is the Constitution. That's what matters.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hold on. So when it comes to chastising black Americans about their behavior, about calling white people crackers, as you say, about their moral claims about the racist system, you can levy a judgment against black Americans for all the things they do. But when it comes to this woman saying the N-word, and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word. Now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous, and it's as the only Black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your fucking problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
We're not even.
Let me ask Ricky. Ricky,
this isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak and then I'll let you respond. Myron, sure. I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against Black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here. Just respond to my argument.
No. If you're struggling with sleepless nights and exhausting days, you might want to try Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who value hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients to improve your sleep, so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, melatonin, and magnesium. It's designed to help you fall asleep and just stay asleep. We've teamed up to give you a massive discount of up to 40% for a limited time. So go to shopbeam.com/Piers, P-I-E-R-S, and use promo code Piers at the checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Piers. Use promo code Piers for up to 40% off. Sleep better, wake up stronger, and show up ready for your family, your work, and your country too.
Now, and my argument to respond to that is this: political correctness, liberalism, and making sure that we are politically correct and don't use certain words could offend people is precisely why we're in the situation that we're in. For decades, we've had to literally tiptoe around saying certain things around certain people, while the other group of people has been able to have impunity and be able to be as racist as they want to be, as violent as they want to be, without any type of consequence. And if you call it out, you're labeled a racist. The reality is this: Black people don't want to live around Black people. I don't want to live around a bunch of Black people. I move to neighborhoods where it's majority white because I know I'm safe. Now, this is uncomfortable reality that no one wants to say, so I'll say it for them. Black people commit a lot of crimes. A majority of the violent crime committed in the United States is committed by a small percentage of people, and they tend to be Black men. Look, the reality is the reality. People don't want to say it, but the political correctness and being nice and not wanting to tell the truth is precisely this problem. And the reason why you're seeing all the support for Metcalf and Shiloh, etc., is because white people have not been able to step up and say what they want to say for a very long time because of what I said before: systemic, organized, where they don't take accountability for their
All right,
decisions.
let me bring in Ricky to respond. Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that I agree that virtue signaling went too far, that political correctness went too far, but we're going from virtue signaling being the norm and being praised to now vice signaling being the norm and being praised. It's not just a matter of does this woman have the right to use that word. I believe that she has the right. I disagree with it. But is she now being rewarded with $500,000? Why are we rewarding people for performing vice instead of virtue? This is not healthy. This is destructive to our society. This is destructive to our social fabric, to our culture, to our ability to live with other fellow Americans. It's gross to reward someone for bad behavior. It's one thing to tolerate it, to say that she has the right to do it, but she called an autistic 5-year-old the N-word. Like, I'm sorry, but I feel like we're kind of like missing the point in the actual context. You can say that it's part of this bigger meta story of Black and white America, but it actually is just like a short little clip, and you don't even know the context of it, and it's actually gross. And if we can't just say that it's gross and bad, then I don't really know where we are.
Well, I think it's interesting to me that Lily Gaddis, you retweeted Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist, by saying he said Black people just raised $500,000 for a cold-blooded killer who stabbed a white teenager to death. So I don't want to hear one word about the Shiloh Hendricks fundraiser. Either everyone gets to be tribal or nobody does. Why would you retweet that?
Because I agree with it. Because we have to fight fire with fire. I mean, at some point, why are
nobody does?
Why are Jewish people allowed to be tribal? Why are Black people allowed to be tribal? But as soon as white people stand up for themselves, we're labeled a racist. And by the way, you call people racist when you want them to stop talking about things.
No, I called you a racist because you admitted you were racist. Hang on. I called, just to be clear, I called you a racist because you openly, proudly admitted you're a racist. So it wasn't a question of exposing you or pointing my finger or trying to get this out of you. You proudly sat there, bold as brass, and said, yeah, I use the N-word all the time against black people. I'm a racist and I'm proud of it. That's what you did.
Racism is just having a preference. I prefer not to live around black people. I prefer not to live in a country where white people in our country are disproportionately attacked by black people. Where in my country, you can have an Austin Metcalf where he asks a guy to leave and he gets stabbed in the heart. I prefer that. That's a preference. Now, what a real racist is, in my opinion, is seeing someone as less human. I'm a Christian. I believe everyone's created in God's image. So I don't see anyone as less human. But that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to have a preference and say, I don't like what happens to be coming out of this community or that community. How is that a bad thing? How is that not just a preference?
Because you've literally made black people sound lesser humans. You don't want to live around them. You want to use the N-word in relation to them, a word that you know causes that community unbelievable offense.
My fault? Is that my fault? If they have bad behavior, if they want to act in a certain way, if I have to cross the street and be afraid that maybe because of the crime statistics that are very real, by the way, is that my fault or is that their fault for having bad behavior?
That's mind-boggling to me for multiple reasons. I mean, we're talking about bad behavior. You know, we've never lynched you, we've never enslaved you, we've never done any of the deep-seated structural forms of injustice to white people that white people have done to black people, and yet to claim some kind of moral superiority in the midst of, and again, in the context of a conversation where a white woman is calling a 5-year-old autistic child the N-word, and we're talking about black people's bad behavior. This is absurd. And the idea of fighting fire with fire, again, is a dishonest argument. Just to take us back to the point here, the people who are supporting Carmelo Anthony's campaign believe that he was wrongfully charged and they're trying to get him legal defense. The people who are defending this woman are saying, yes, we know you called the 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word, and we want more of it. We approve of it. We support it. These are not the same thing. And it's bonkers to me that we couldn't all stand and say, hey, it is wrong to call a 5-year-old autistic black child the N-word. I mean, Myron, let me just ask you that question. I think this is a yes or no question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think the woman was wrong to do what she did to that child in that park?
I don't approve of that. But what I will say is that it's very important to understand the entire context of what led us to this position. Because again, Metcalf and Hendricks is a microcosm of a much larger problem. Earlier, we were talking about tribalism when you were mentioning Nick Fuentes' tweet. Here's the thing. Black people could be as tribal as they want to be. You have people like Tariq Nasheed, Dr. Umar Johnson running around about black power and marry black women and keep it in the hood and all this other stuff. But if white people assemble and say, you know what, white power, we need to keep our nation white, they're immediately ostracized and labeled as supremacists, and they get banned off every single platform. I find that interesting. And matter of fact, you went ahead and
Is that the same thing?
No, actually, it is the same thing. Because here's the problem with black people.
No,
you
it's
guys
not.
Hold on, let me finish this. Black people practice the very racism they cry about. You guys can gather together and say Black Lives Matter, Black Power, but if white people get together and say white power, gather together, they're considered white supremacists and they get banned off every single platform. Why is that Jared Taylor and Nick Fuentes are banned off every platform for practicing white nationalism, but black people are allowed to stand every single platform getting interviews on a Breakfast Club? Explain that to me. There's a two-tier situation here where black people are able to benefit off of being racist while whites are not. And what we're dealing with right now in America is literally a backlash to this black supremacy has been able to run around unchecked for a long time, and no one has the balls to call it out. Here's the other thing I want to say. Everyone's flipping out over Shiloh Hendricks and saying the N-word.
Can I respond to the point you just made, though?
No, hold on. Nobody flipped out like this when the United States was getting destroyed in 2020 because of black protests destroying every liberal city in America. So I don't want to hear it about, she made $100,000 because she said the N-word. Who cares? They destroyed billions of dollars of structure because someone got killed who was a criminal. That's the problem in America. You guys get a privilege that no one else gets to enjoy. You could be racist.
Okay. All right, I have to hang on. I've got to hold it there. We've got another guest joining us. Mark, I'll come back to you to respond to that in a moment. But we've been joined now by Jacob Wells. He's the Christian founder of the Give, Send, Go donation site that both campaigns have been hosted on. Thank you very much indeed for joining me, Mr. Wells. First of all, your reaction to what seems to me to be a blatant hijacking of both of these fundraising host sites for different reasons, but definitely been hijacked by people for racist motivation.
No, I think that's completely correct, Piers. I do think that there was an element here that did hijack, that came at this and really became a racist, tribalist element between the two campaigns. Independently of themselves, I think that they would have existed on our platform in a whole different manner, but because of the narratives around them and the proximity to each other, they created a life of their own, and it is unfortunate. It's sad to see, because as a Christian myself, what I respect about humanity and the image of God on us, I believe that we're all valuable. I believe that people have dignity and worth, and we want to see that upheld for people, even in difficult moments. That's why our platform exists, is to share hope with people. And it's been a difficult week, several weeks of just navigating the complexity of these situations as a platform.
Studies show that strength training burns more fat than cardio alone and is critical for maintaining muscle mass and bone density as we age. Jacked Up Fitness has the perfect tool. The Jacked Up Power Rack Pro is the ultimate all-in-one home gym system for a full body workout, and you can do it in your spare room or garage. I'm delighted to say I now have one myself. So if you're new to strength training, there is a whole library of full body video workouts. You just press play and you follow along. With top quality equipment and first class content, Jacked Up Fitness makes your fitness goals accessible and convenient. We've teamed up to give you 10% off the Power Rack Pro. Visit getjackedup.com to sign up for the free program and use promo code PIERS, P-I-E-R-S, for your discount. That's getjackedup.com. But let me ask you, in the case of Shiloh Hendricks, it seems to me pretty open and shut. This is a woman on camera repeatedly using the N-word, first of all with a 5-year-old autistic child, it seems, then an adult who's filming her, doesn't care, is blatantly racist. Why should someone like that be allowed to raise any money on your site if, as you say, you are driven by a Christian purpose?
Well, that's a fascinating question. I would almost flip it around. It's like if we tried to create litmus tests for everybody to come onto a platform to use it, I pretty much could guarantee nobody would pass the litmus test, because the reality of humanity is that we're broken. This was the whole principle of Jesus in the first place, is that we needed a savior, and that's what he came for.
So just to be clear, then, hang on, just to be clear, so that's interesting what you just said. So you would let anybody onto your platform to raise money for anything? Is that your position?
No, the position is that there are laws that define what is legal and what isn't legal, and we adhere to the laws as the framework for what is and isn't allowed.
But inciting racial hatred is a crime, right?
Inciting racial hatred is a crime?
Yeah.
Where?
You don't think it's a crime?
In the U.S.?
Yeah, it is.
I've never seen that as a law on the books, but
it is.
That was part of the reason.
I'm not even American, and I know it's a law on the books. You're not allowed to incite racial hatred or violence against ethnic groups based on their ethnicity. What could be a more glaring example than someone on camera calling black people the N-word?
Violence and words are two different things, and we do make a distinction of that in America. They are very clearly different things. I don't know of any law. I'd be happy for you to inform me with what that law is, because I don't know everything. I'm happy to admit that. But as has already been mentioned on the show earlier, there are needs that exist outside of the reality of that moment for Shiloh. I don't condone the behavior. Obviously, we didn't see the actual behavior that was accused in the moment. What we saw was the aftermath of a kind of baited moment.
Yeah, but she carries on using the N-word to a black person with impunity. That's a racist.
Yeah, well, she might have some racial elements. I don't know. I don't know Shiloh personally.
Some racial element. She uses the N-word repeatedly to a black man, and she doesn't deny having just used it to a 5-year-old black child. I'm not sure what more evidence you need that this person's a racist. And my question for you is simply, where is that line for you? You say it's the law, but if somebody is literally raising hundreds of thousands of dollars to support them because they were blatantly racist, I'm just curious how that fits with the Christian ethos of what your site's supposed to be about.
Well, it fits actually very well, because we can, like I started to say, we don't operate on a litmus test of your past behaviors as far as the services that you get to provide. The moment that you start walking down the narrative that we're not going to provide you electricity, water, because we don't like you, the structural elements, the movement of money, which is a basic element to society.
So let me just ask you this. So if someone was being blatantly anti-Semitic, for example, right, would you allow them to raise money on your platform to defend themselves over their anti-Semitism?
We sit in a very interesting position as a platform in trying to navigate the complexities of these issues.
Yeah, so
in a
what's
country
the
that
answer,
says
though? What's the
you
answer?
can say things. Well, I'll say historically, we've stood on that principle of saying we're going to allow things that we disagree with.
Okay.
And we've allowed things that we completely disagree with.
Do you allow
on the
people to
platform.
do
But our
pro-abortion?
mission-
Do you allow pro-abortion fundraising?
Actually, there's two caveats to what Give, Send, Go has carved out, and one of them is it's broken into two pieces, but it's the protection of children. So we say we're going to protect children because they don't have a voice. So we're not going to allow fundraising for abortions on Give, Send, Go, and we're not going to allow fundraising for the transition of children.
Okay, but what about a
fundraising on
5-year-old
Give, Send, Go.
child
If
being?
you-
What about a 5-year-old black child being called the N-word?
What about that?
Where does the protection for that child come in?
Well, that's their parents' responsibility. That's like if my child, and I have several children, if my child was called something bad, I would take my child aside and I would tell them.
You just said that one of the
what
caveats.
words
Hang on,
mean.
you just said one of the caveats for Give, Send, Go is the protection of children. You talked about the transitioning process. You
Right.
talked about abortion, which is obviously your Christian perspective on that. And I'm simply saying,
Right.
why doesn't it include children being racially abused? Why is that suddenly the parents' responsibility, not yours as a platform?
No,
where
because
you
there
are
are
you are
campaigns that
literally
exist on Give,
You are
Send,
going to
Go.
make a well. Look, let me just spell it out to you. The way things are going, you're going to make a millionaire out of a woman who racially abused a child. And if your
Well,
caveats are for
that's
protection,
incorrect.
well, hang on. Well, you are.
No, I'm not. Because one, we're a platform. We don't make donations to these campaigns. These are individuals that are making donations.
This person will
of their
become a
own volition.
millionaire
This is
because
not
of your
Give, Send-
platform.
No, it's not because of our platform. They could
is.
send checks and they could send money a million different ways to individuals.
But they're
Those-
using your
those
platform.
avenues.
And you've already said to me you carve
they-
out things because you want to
Right.
protect children. I'm just curious, why is
Right.
racially abusing a child not one of your carve-outs?
Well, what the campaign is fundraising for. So we have to make a distinction between what happens on Give, Send, Go and then what happens outside of Give, Send, Go. Because we can't police everything that happens outside of Give, Send, Go. All that we can police is what happens on Give, Send, Go. So the two instances that I gave were about campaigns that if they were created on Give, Send, Go, that we would, for those scenarios, we would prevent. But things that happen outside of Give, Send, Go, we can't police around. So does someone have the right to raise funds for their security, for their protection, because they've been doxxed, because of a snapshot moment, because everyone has a camera in their pocket? And today, we can see the outworking of this. 3 years ago in New York City, in the middle of the city, there was an altercation between a woman and a black man over bird watching and dogs. And her name was Amy Cooper. And to this day, 3 years later, she hasn't been able to find a job. Because she made a bad mistake, saying the wrong thing in a particular moment
Well, she
where a
racially
camera was
abused
pulled
him.
out.
She
and
racially
recorded.
abused him. If you racially abuse people, you are made accountable for your actions.
So for the rest of your life, the rest of your
you
life,
know what?
you're shut off from society.
If you call black people the N-word and racially abuse them, unfortunately, yes, it has consequences, probably for your professional life,
Now, I'm not saying,
for the
I'm
rest
not
of your
saying
professional
that,
life.
We understand that there are consequences.
Yeah.
I understand there's consequences. What I'm saying is what you're advocating for, it seems, is that for the rest of Shiloh's life, she should be pushed into the recesses of society, and that she should not have a voice, that she should be canceled and silenced.
This is how systemic manipulation works. Instead of promoting redemption, the narrative pushes for silencing dissent against racism. We must challenge this agenda that seeks to normalize and reward despicable behavior.
This is what drives people to suicide. And it's this cancel culture mantra that thinks that the best way forward as a society is to cancel them rather than try to bring some redemption into the situation. And for Give, Send, Go, our purpose and our hope is not that we agree with every single campaign. It's why we started a prayer team at Give, Send, Go. We actually call every campaign owner and we pray with them. And we actually talk them back from the ideological edges that they find themselves in by saying, you know what, there's a God that loves you. You don't need to get into this tribal space. You need to focus on rebuilding that relationship with him because that's the fabric for a principled and moral nation.
Here's the flaw with Shiloh. Here's the flaw with Shiloh Hendricks. She, in her message left on the donation site, it goes on, sentence after sentence, playing the victim. She never once mentions that she repeatedly used the N-word. It doesn't exist in her description of the victimhood statement she puts out there. So it's incredibly disingenuous because people who read that will not realise, if they don't know the story, that she racially abused a child and then an adult in a most horrific manner. And I'm curious for you, as a company, you take, I believe, tips and donations from each of the donations that come in. Is that how the system works?
The system works on voluntary donations.
Okay.
So the only thing that we receive
just
as
out of
revenue
interest,
from
of the $600,000 plus that have now been raised for her, how much have you guys made, Give, Send, Go, from that money? Presumably you know, right?
I actually don't know. I haven't kept track of what the donations to that campaign in particular to Give, Send, Go are.
Do you feel comfortable? You feel comfortable making money out of that?
What I feel comfortable doing is last week flying out to Detroit, Michigan, and stepping into somebody's brokenness who had a campaign on Give, Send, Go because their car was stolen and another car was in an accident and they found out that their 3-year-old had cancer.
Well, that's
and
a different story.
It's
a different story completely.
And it's a completely different story, but it's a reality of what we use the funds from Give, Send, Go for.
The bottom line is you're making, I don't know, tens of thousands, maybe more, out of a particular part of your site that has been set up by a racist who was proudly racist on camera repeatedly. And you say you want to protect children, but the reason that she is so infamous is she originally, in that exchange, racially abused a child. And you might laugh and smirk and smile,
none of
but
us,
I don't find any of that funny.
You keep jumping. Yeah, I don't think it's funny either. You've put me in a position to try to defend Shiloh, which I have no defense for Shiloh. I don't defend calling a child something like that. What is very evident is that, one, we don't have video of her doing any of those things outside of the post video. So
where she literally uses the N-word repeatedly, and she doesn't deny using it against the child. In fact, she makes it clear she did do it because he was behaving like one, she said. So I don't know why you're being so mealy-mouthed about it.
So,
the bottom line is she's obviously a nasty racist. She's proud of being a racist. She admitted being a racist, and we heard her being a racist. There is no doubt about what happened. What you're trying to do is cast a little bit of doubt, if you don't mind me saying, because it helps your corporate position, which is you're making a ton of money out of a racist who is going to be a millionaire out of being a racist because of your platform.
If you think allowing this campaign helps our corporate position, come on, Piers.
You know what would help you? You know what would help you corporately? If you were genuinely true to your mission statement as a Christian site, that you want to protect children, and you were big on that at the start of this interview. I want to protect the kids. Then you would remove her site immediately once you had established in your own brain that she'd racially abused a 5-year-old, which, by the way, she admits to doing. Right? So you could just do that like that.
Yeah, no, we could do a lot of things, but in the country that we live in, there are certain fabric elements that make this America what it is, and they need to be defended. So
is free
just
speech
because
one
people
of them?
have upset feelings.
Free speech?
Free speech, freedom of expression.
Really? And yet, how odd? Because, Mr. Wells, unless I'm mistaken, you have now removed the ability to comment and removed all the comments on this particular donation site, haven't you? Where's the free speech rights of those people who commented? Or are you just a hypocrite?
No, Well, recognize what free speech is. Free speech is a prohibition against the government enacting laws to prohibit your speech.
You literally just made a speech talking about freedom of expression and free speech, but you have removed all the comments from here. Why are you suppressing and censoring people's right to free speech to comment on these sites?
We have, as a private business, the right to operate our business the way that we want
to operate. You have the right to
suppress
suppress free speech. I don't dispute it. I'm just curious why you pretend to be this great defender of free speech when you're literally doing the opposite.
No, what we saw very clearly in this situation was a campaign for Carmelo Anthony, and on the back of it, a campaign for Shiloh, and they were competing off of each other, and they were in a cycle of vitriolic tornado of sorts. And we said we need to put some calming effect on this by removing the back and forth element that's going on in this particular situation. It wouldn't necessarily have happened if these campaigns were completely independent, months, years apart from each other.
But as a Christian, again, because I'm told that the Give, Send, Go site for Luigi Mangione, who we saw allegedly executing a healthcare boss in cold blood. I don't think there's much allegedly about it, but we'll let the process take its course. He's got nearly £1 million for his defence via your site. And, it's sort of odd, isn't it? Is it not an inconsistency in your Christian position on this? That on the one hand,
it shows your lack of understanding what Christian faith actually
Let me ask you the
stands
question. On the one hand, if you want anything pro-abortion on your site, that's a no-no because you're all pro-life. And yet, on the other hand, you're helping a bunch of alleged murderers raise millions. Do you not see an inconsistency with your Christian hat on?
Well, it just actually goes to the shallow misconception of Christianity that you have, and I would implore you, Piers, to go after reading the Bible for what it says. That the number one critique of Jesus by the religious leaders
is ringing quite loud in my head.
The number one critique of Jesus by the religious leaders of the day was that he hung around with the prostitutes, the drunkards, and the sinners. He was the guy that went to the lowliest of low places, and he actually shared hope in the midst of the worst places. We find ourselves in a very similar situation, and our goal at Give, Send, Go is to share hope to people in the midst, and part of that is navigating how we do it. We have a prayer team that calls people and prays with them, actually shows them that they're valuable. We have an initiative, like I was mentioning earlier.
All right, but the bottom line, Mr. Wells, I appreciate you coming on, but the bottom line is, the reality of the situation is that if you racially abuse a kid, you can become a millionaire on your site and you won't stop it happening. And if you kill somebody or allegedly kill somebody, you won't stop that happening either. But with your Christian hat on, if somebody wants to put anything up that's pro-abortion, whoa, not having that, Gov. And if you want to put a comment under one of these more contentious sites, your free speech rule immediately collapses.
Listen, I'm sorry, Piers, if you can't recognize that children don't have a voice and they should be protected.
What about the voice of this? What about the voice of this little 5-year-old black kid? Where was his right not to be racially abused?
He doesn't have a campaign on Give, Send, Go. I would love to see a campaign for him on Give, Send, Go. Okay. He doesn't have a campaign on Give, Send, Go. But
the reality is that our society is at a crossroads. Are we going to stand by as racism becomes a lucrative endeavor? We must raise our voices against these manipulative tactics that exploit social issues for financial gain. What are your thoughts? Is it time to take a stand against racism being rewarded?